This is the Society for Healthcare Innovations interview series. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to interview Danish Nagda, the CEO and founder of Rezilient. Danish brought up something in his interview that I wanted to discuss as we enter the transitional period between Memorial Day and Independence Day in Israel. When I was a soldier, I took an oath to defend my country, and I knew that it carried risks. The frontline healthcare workers who are fighting against this pandemic took an oath to protect people, but never imagined during the course of their residency or nursing school that they would have to put their own lives on the line. Companies like Rezilient are providing the technology that allows us to keep those frontline workers safe. As a soldier, I knew that my government and the military would do everything possible to keep me safe and everything possible to bring me home if something went wrong. And I think we owe that same commitment to our frontline workers. So I think this interview is particularly important to watch to understand what technology already exists that could really protect our frontline workers and prevent their exposure, repeated exposure to this virus, and still allow them to treat folks that need treatment. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Danish as much as I enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Nagda.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Corey.
So could you tell us a little bit about Rezilient as a starting point so folks understand what you guys do?
Yeah, so Rezilient is the first robotic telehealth platform out there. We allow the doctor to not only communicate with you, but to beam into a robot avatar, assume control, and actually examine you in real time over the internet.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
And so just think about it. When you go to a doctor's office, last time you went to a doctor's office, it feels so long ago. But when you go to a doctor's office, they don't just like come in and say, they don't look at you and say, you look fine, and it's like walk out, right? Like that, because that's what telehealth unfortunately is, right? Like you can't examine a patient. They have connected devices where the patient is examining themselves, but I didn't go through residency and go through med school so that I can have someone else do my physical exam for me. And the ability for the doctor to literally transmit their skills over the internet and be able to examine you in real time using tools they already use, like endoscopes, otoscopes, dermatoscopes, like the things that we already use. If you're a dermatologist and you don't look at skin using a dermatoscope, what kind of dermatologist are you, right? And so it's kind of it's the basic concept, but we want to be able to allow doctors to not only do communication, but the physical exam over the internet. That's the real goal, and actually control the tools, not watch somebody else do it.
Right. So what inspired you to start this company?
So I'm a physician. I'm an ear, nose, throat surgeon, but I'm also a caregiver. So my father has been sick. He was sick for many years, but he got really sick the last year I was in residency, and dad and mom were visiting me for the weekend, and he had cardiogenic shock. So literally was at my hospital for over 6 months and was at Barnes, the health system, for over a year. And I became a primary caregiver. So I'm not only a doctor, I'm a caregiver as well for both my parents. They both have health issues. I bought a house, suited up for my parents. I mean, what many Americans are doing, 1 out of 6 Americans are caregivers. And so no one talks about it. It's like the hidden crisis that no one talks about. And we, last year, I spent 4,900 minutes going back and forth to doctor's appointments with dad. And I was like, this is ridiculous. There's got to be a better way. I mean, 4,900 minutes for a doctor, if you just think economically, right? A doctor makes $3 per minute in revenue. Like just put that in your head and be like, there's got to be a better way. And there are other people that are doing the same thing. They're leaving their jobs. They're having to take care of family members. And that's not even counting the work that I'm doing at home, taking care of mom and dad and like, making sure dad is, turning him in bed, things like that. And so telehealth was supposed to fix that problem, right? Like, oh, dad can be at home. Why do I have to get him into a wheelchair, get him to the doctor's office? I mean, this is ridiculous, right? But honestly, the doctors that I talked to, they were like, how can I see a complex patient like your dad completely over video? I have to examine them. And that's where it kind of started. And I was like, oh, so if you could examine my dad, he wouldn't have to be sitting in a waiting room with a bunch of other sick people. And, at that time, I wasn't even thinking about COVID, but just think about that.
Right.
The most vulnerable amongst us are the most exposed amongst us. How crazy is that? Just think about your own parents. It's like scary because, you know, honestly, like I wouldn't wish it on anybody else to be a caregiver. It's really hard. And caregiver support groups, I'm going to give them a shout out. They're incredible. They saved my life, honestly. I mean, and doctors that are caregivers are probably more frustrated than others. In fact, you know, people were talking about the person that committed suicide, the doctor that committed suicide in New York, right? If you looked at her background, she was helping her mom as well. And so, you know, that level of pressure that comes with taking care of patients, taking care of your family, and then forgetting to take care of yourself often, but then you really work hard to take care of yourself. It's just a lot, while also thinking about billing and payments and new technology and all these things. I mean, so it's not surprising that doctors are just like, I just want to see my patient, right? Because that's the best part of their day.
Right. Wow. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for what you do. Honestly, I think I speak for most non-clinicians when I say that we are in awe of the work that you guys do every day, but it's particularly clear now during this pandemic, just how essential you are to keeping us all safe. So thank you on behalf of all of us who don't.
I appreciate that.
Of course. So speaking of the pandemic, let's talk a little bit about how that has shifted your thinking about your company, and what that means for the future.
So, you know, it's interesting. When COVID first hit, you know, in December, unlike what the president says, you know, we already were like, okay, we were doing robotic telehealth, right? But we would go to health systems and we would go to doctors and we would say, hey, you know, what if you could examine the patient remotely? And they said to us, well, I need to get like video telehealth first. Maybe shoot some text to my patients first, right? Like they weren't even like, they didn't have telehealth 1.0. We were talking to them about 2.0 and 3.0, right? Now, every doctor, if they wanted to keep their practice afloat, had to try telehealth. And that brought our core value proposition really to the front and center. And so now we're getting contacted by doctors and health systems saying, hey, you know that thing you were trying to pitch to us like 6 months ago or a year ago? Oh, now we're actually interested because now, you know, we're putting our healthcare workers at risk at the front lines. When you go in, you know where the best place in the country is to get COVID? The emergency room. That is the best place in the country to get it, you know, because you walk in, you're going to get it. So if we can keep people out of the emergency room, we can get them to get access to care earlier, more upstream, kind of like what you guys do with chronic care management, right? Like really getting absolutely to the front and center and closer to home. That's how you keep healthcare workers safe. Because right now in this pandemic, healthcare workers, no one's talking about this, but what about the healthcare workers in terms of their own risk profile? And the fact that a lot of them are going to choose to kind of not put themselves in that same position in the second wave, right? Maybe healthcare workers will say, hey, I'll take a back desk job. I'll work in the, you know, I don't want to work in the ICU. I don't want to work in the emergency room. Maybe I'll go work for an outpatient clinic because they'll bail us out again, right? And so, I mean, it really, wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are really, honestly, they're heroes at the front lines. I would say doctors, but nurses especially, because they are the ones that are doing the front end testing. But how can we tell ourselves that it's okay to do that when I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy, put them at the front lines to a disease that is communicable, when there are tools like ours and others, not just us, the others as well, where they could actually have that separation between the healthcare worker and the patient before we know what their status is, right? Like, let's protect the healthcare worker. So that's actually really helped business, obviously, with COVID. You know, we've also, we had to do a deployment way faster with our first customer. Like, we were planning it in Q3, and we had to do it in end of Q1. And that was, you know, you can imagine from a business standpoint, we were just like, while, by the way, I can't get anything from outside the country. Supply chain is completely stopped, right? And we do a little bit of hardware, robots, right? And so we just put things together and we got it out there because our customers wanted it. And we did roll it out slowly and, you know, like sourcing here, sourcing there, trying to get things together. But, you know, we tried our best to support the first customer. We gave them, one thing that we did do was we gave health systems and big providers and even smaller medical offices the ability to try it before you buy it, which was important in COVID. So that was hard, but we did it. And obviously it's paying dividends, but, you know, ultimately, we're here to help the doctor help the patient. So that's kind of what we're still doing. I will say all these companies, they're completely shifting to a COVID only model. I would recommend against that. having done this before, this is not my first rodeo. The first company was Schoology, and Schoology exited last year, and it was an incredible journey. And we were there at the financial crisis. And people were like, hey, maybe you should do financial education for people that are looking at mortgage loans, like things like that. We were learning Schoology. I don't know if you're familiar, but it was Facebook and Blackboard together. We were like working with like high schools and stuff. And they were like, oh, get into the financial business. And so you're seeing all these companies, I'm sure you're seeing it, that have like a COVID motive.
Yep.
And I think, that's flawed. Help people help the doctors, or help, do something that is more virtualized, because everything that's like Zoom, they're not a COVID company, but they're doing great.
Right.
So, that's the one big learning lesson, was don't change your core value proposition because the market forces a change. If you had a good value proposition, it would sustain through.
Right. And I think folks have kind of come up with these parallel offerings where they're already working with the health system and they deploy, symptom checker, let's say, which is kind of something, clinical pathways. Now we've added one for COVID, right? It's not shifting.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, because that's actually showing to me, if I'm a health system, I want to see, hey, is this a tool that's going to be flexible and modular enough that when the next big thing happens, I can morph this tool to meet my needs. And if your tools can do that, that's great.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are people out there that don't think that robotic telehealth is needed yet. They think like, let's get the doctors onto regular telehealth first. And I can tell you, like, what happens to all those chronic care patients that actually need to be evaluated, like the diabetic whose feet haven't been seen in like 8 months, right? Like that person could get an ulcer, and that ulcer could get infected, and God forbid that person. By the way, my dad is insulin dependent diabetic. I check his feet always, right? And you can't do it over video. You gotta actually examine them. And so, these are all the things that unfortunately in COVID have become a reality.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about the actual capabilities of Rezilient's robots. I mean, what can they do?
So when you think about the physical exam, right? So you can communicate. Let's just go over the communication piece. There's a communication docking station that, and it can be mobile, it can be stationary, but it's got small capabilities that I cared about, because again, I was thinking about my parents. And so if you've got a hearing aid, it directly connects to a hearing aid using something called telecoil technology. So it doesn't use Bluetooth. It works with every hearing aid, which is important, because we shouldn't only work with the hearing aids that are more expensive, and we should work with all hearing aids. And so we use telecoil technology to talk to the elderly patients, like my mom who has a hearing aid, and she's not elderly though. But the other big thing is it's better for the visually impaired. So we have some things. So the communication robot, or the communication docking station, is just to improve the communication experience, and especially for people that are a little bit older and are not as tech savvy, because telehealth by design is actually built for the younger patient, right? You have apps on your phone, you have all these other things, and the super elderly patient, and you guys know this because you do chronic care management, building an app for that patient that's in their 70s is a lot harder. It's a lot harder, but it's a lot more rewarding, because when they do a magical experience, they are your greatest advocate. And we found that with our technology. And so that's the communication piece. And the second piece of Rezilient's robot, which is what I think you were referring to, was the examination piece. And the examination robot, there are 5 parts of an exam. All right, I'm going to do some med school teaching here, sorry. But there are 5 parts of an exam, right? Inspection, so what you see. So you can see either with your eyes, or you can see through a tool. So that includes everything from looking inside your eye at your retina, looking inside your ear at your eardrum, looking up your nose with a nasal endoscope, looking in your mouth, either what the dentists use or directly just visually, looking at your skin through a dermatoscope, looking through. We're not doing colonoscopies, don't worry, none of that. But essentially all inspection, we can do pretty much every inspection that you can think of. So we can do essentially all those tools. So ophthalmoscope, dermatoscope, endoscope, otoscope, nasal endoscope. So we can kind of do the whole gamut of those. So that's number 1, inspection. Number 2 is auscultation, what you hear. So stethoscope is the most common auscultation device. And so we can do stethoscope, heart and lung exam, things like that. Especially for the cardiologist, that's super important. Then after that, the third one in the physical exam, the actual physical exam, is percussion, which is kind of a lost art, where the doctor goes like this and it hears like the resonance. We do not do that because no doctor does that, except for maybe GI doctors and some pulmonary doctors. And if it becomes a big thing that they want, we can obviously build it. The last one that we do is insonation, which is ultrasound. So the doctor can do an ultrasound remotely, which is probably one of our most liked features, because you can imagine for OB-GYN or labor and delivery, I'm assuming you don't have a pregnant wife.
Assumption.
That you know of. And so, so let's say your wife is pregnant and she has to go. Would you really want your wife right now in the middle of a pandemic going to a doctor's office? Hell no. Hell no. I would not. All right. And I have a fiance and I think she's not pregnant. But I would never let that happen because that's dangerous. That is actually putting your kid in danger, right? Unless that office is extremely well managed, which many of them are. But just speaking general things being general, let's assume that it's not the best environment, right? So if your doctor could actually just sit on a computer and actually examine you using a remote ultrasound capability, I mean, you wouldn't have to go in. Your kid would be definitely much more safe, right? And so that's the fifth one. The one I skipped was palpation, the ability to touch remotely. And I can tell you, we cannot do that right now, and probably not until 5G becomes more ubiquitous, because you need something, the latency, the delay, and when I move something on the screen and something moves remotely has to be 1 millisecond.
Wow.
So right now we can do less than 200, maybe 150 actually, milliseconds remotely. So we've done it from Penn to WashU over the internet already. Yeah. So I gave a lecture at Penn and live did it in front of, I had a med student do it actually. And poor co-founder, but on the co-founder, which is kind of crazy. But I was trying to make a point. But like the infusion of 5G, which by the way, what a great time for 5G to come in, right? The one time that we're all communicating remotely the most, if 5G can really come in, and we're working with Verizon on this, and we're going to go to the 5G labs, we're going to put this out there, but ultimately in 2021, our goal, and as part of the X Prize, we're one of 77 teams in the world that have been chosen to compete in the X Prize. That's like Elon Musk's big thing. Yeah. And so in that, it's part of the goal is to actually do remote touch. And so we're going to be working on that. Hopefully by 2021, 2022, we would allow a doctor to do palpation. So like touching the patient remotely and feeling the sensation of what it feels like on their skin.
Wow.
And that's going to be the birth of what they call the tactile internet. It's coming. So like literally having like a loved one remotely and giving them an embrace, we will be able to do that by 2021, 2022.
That is crazy cool. So
it's
where
coming.
do you go to receive this care? I mean, the robot isn't going to the patient's home, is it?
Not yet. But that's the ultimate goal. So, you got to crawl before you walk and you got to walk before you run. So, we have a three-sided market, right? So we have the doctor, we have the patient, and we have the location. So what we did for our first customer was that we made the doctor's office the location as well. So imagine you can see your doctor at any of the locations of that health system.
Wow.
So you just go to your local doc, right? You go to your local clinic, whichever one's closest for you, and your doctor can see you at any of those, right? For your scheduled appointment. And that had a very good positive response. So that is how we made our three-sided market into a two-sided market. And that was really important, right? But now we are actively pursuing conversations with medical retail stores, grocery stores, with pharmacies and clinics, the big retail pharmacies, and really imagine you could go to your local, I don't know, Walgreens, and see your doctor there. That is the ultimate goal, is that, once we get more and more locations, for a doctor to expand the reach of their skills is extremely challenging and expensive. A satellite office for your practice costs $250K minimum to get set up, right? So imagine you could have 100 or 1,000 satellite offices where you could do, I don't want to say the exact same as what you do in person. There is this like doctor's touch stuff that I don't know if we can do yet, but maybe with VRAR you could. But the ability to have that presence remotely, if we can give doctors that, we believe the doctors are going to be more likely to adopt this. And you start with, as I mentioned, crawl. So you're starting with doctor's offices, doctor connections. I don't know if you have any family members that see doctors a lot, but for my dad, he sees 7 doctors. So imagine if you go to one doctor's office and see all 7 doctors in the same day, or see all 7 doctors at the closest doctor's office. I mean, that's the ideal.
Yeah, I mean, my brother had ulcerative colitis, and he spent a good part of a year in the hospital, and he had a dozen doctors. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
and it's tough, man. It's like awful. It takes 49. It's a long time, and 4,900 minutes, and it's one person's life. Like my dad, his main job for like a year was just going to doctor's appointments.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make someone feel like they're contributing to society, and it's tough.
What is your feeling on the trade-off? And I'm sure this has shifted a little bit as a result of the pandemic, but that face-to-face, right, is now replaced by a robot. Now, there's obviously a great danger involved in today's environment in showing up in person, as you already noted. So how do you think about that trade-off between safety and comfort?
I think about it as any other technology ever, right? So when the telephone started, right, they said, it's not the same. I rather just talk to you face to face. Then you had video and audio and like the video phones. I don't know if you guys know that, but you might be too young for that. But they used to have video phones, and they said the same thing with Zoom. They said the same thing, but today Zoom is the modality of choice for businesses around the world. I think what's going to happen is actually we're going to get closer and closer to that, right? So the big difference, the doctor-patient touch. I just told you that in 2021. You might be able to actually feel your doctor's touch remotely. You put your headset on, they put their headset on, you show up in some virtual medical office, right? A digital office that kind of looks like a real office. Have you ever done VR, Corey?
Yeah. Wild.
Now you can imagine it, right? And then you don't even know that there are robots around you. And you think your doctor's standing right there looking in your ear, but it's actually the robot that's looking in your ear. How would you know the difference if it's immersive, right?
My mind is blown. Give me a second.
Just think about it, right? And so, I mean, this is where it has to go, because everything is pointing to, patient is safest and most likely to adhere to any recommendations when that visit is happening at home. And the whole world goes into a loop, in my opinion. Like the work, history repeats itself very, very strongly, but in a very different way. Back in the day, house calls were the way that things happened, right? Imagine a modern house call, but like with all the capabilities of the doctor's office. As we've miniaturized all the tools down, we can actually get there. Just like back in the day, if you needed a ride from one city to another, you would have a friend drive you over and you'd pay them a little bit of money for their problems, right? That's called Uber now. Right? Like, so it's the same. Airbnb was the same thing. They used to be called guest houses. I mean, I'm just saying, like, or bread and breakfast. But this is kind of how you can technologically enable what used to happen before. I know this is a little bit crazier than those two examples, but
it makes a lot of sense. However, especially in light of, if you told me 6 months ago what the world would look like today, I'd tell you were crazy. So it just goes to show you what I know, right?
Well, or what any of us knew. I mean,
right.
No, I will say, except for
Bill Gates,
except for Bill Gates and some of the experts, right, who said that the biggest fear that we should have is a pandemic, and we should have probably listened to them. But none of us could have really predicted this would happen. I mean, no doctor could have predicted, I think, in good faith, that we would shut down the entire economy. Right? I mean, can you imagine, like, the streets are empty in New York. I mean, how is that possible?
Every time I go outside, it blows my mind. I feel like I'm walking in some sort of post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, but, it's the world we live in right now. And, what we're going to see. So, right now, we know that there was already a shortage of doctors, right? We know by 2030, we're going to have a shortage of like 100 or 200,000 doctors. That's a lot. That's only 1 million doctors in America. Right? So that's a lot of doctors, especially as urban areas were getting more and more dense. Now we're going to see an exodus of urban areas. I think people are going to be like, I don't want to go through this again. I don't know if that's going to really last, but it's going to be a short exodus and maybe a return. But at the end of the day, what we're going to see is doctors are going to have to become more scalable. And the way that you do that is by allowing a doctor to be where they need to be, having a life, being safe, being at home or being at work or whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, but the ability to transmit their skills to wherever, instead of having patients come to the points of care, the doctor transmits their skills to the point of need. And that actually improves access to care, keeping people out of hospitals, right? And therefore decreasing the cost of care, making the upstream payer much happier, making the patient much happier, and ultimately making the doctor much happier. And that's actually how it happens, right? So that's what, and it's not just gonna be for doctors, it's gonna be for plumbers, it's gonna be for mechanics, anything that's physical, high skilled labor, we're gonna see them beaming out and being where they need to be. Because you know what, robots right now, I can't program a robot to do a physical exam. Like I cannot, because patients might move, things like that, right? But
Right.
a human can account for that, because we still are not there where we can. Autonomous vehicles are easy because you're on a road and you're just driving, right? Like it's not. But you know, if you actually think about it, with autonomous vehicles, the reason why we got there so quickly is because, except for Fred Flintstone, every other person that was driving a car was not using their legs; they were using a medium. They were pushing on something, right? And that thing was transducing that information and making the car move. So you always had that connection where you were watching how the person was driving the car. But when a doctor examines a patient, no one's watching. 2.5 billion physical exams, no one knows how the doctor does it. Think about it. How many of them are digitally captured? Less than 0.01%, like easily, right? 2.5 billion exams. Talk about a training data set, right? And so if you could be the medium between the doctor and the patient, you could actually allow that doctor to be able to say, oh, just do an ear check, and it mimics the doctor's movements. And that's kind of what we're doing, is to allow the doctor to become more scalable so that they're actually using their cognitive abilities, not their technical abilities over time.
It makes total sense. And in fact, the president of our society is a physician at Penn. And one of the things that he was talking about was how this has really thrust innovation forward. You know, you have a doctor who suspected COVID. He can't be in the hospital, but a PA has him on FaceTime when examining a patient. He said, you know, 80% of what I do, anyone can do. It's that extra 20% where they really need my experience. And we can now do that by video to a certain extent. And I think, you know, what you are proposing is the continuation of that, right? The next level of that, which is we can actually, it's not just a person, it's a robot that is doing what I want to do, just not where I am.
Just think about it. Telehealth changed mental health. When was the last time in your lifetime that you had heard about mental health as much as you have in like the last 2 years?
No, I haven't. I mean, this is a new era.
It's a new age. It's a new age. Exactly. It's a new era. And it's because when I do a mental health appointment, which I don't, you don't want an ENT doing a mental health appointment. It's a bad idea. We're from here to here. Everything above and below is outside my domain. But you know, when you do a mental health appointment, you don't need to examine the patient. No wonder it works so well. Right? Think about it. But if, again, an ENT that doesn't look in your ear, nose, and throat, quack, complete quack, right? Like, you know, like, or a cardiologist that doesn't listen to your heart and lungs, probably not a good cardiologist, right? Like, you know,
Right.
And so it's just, that's the thing, is like the more hands-on part of the specialties, psychiatry does not have that as much, and behavioral health barely has it, right? And so that's why they are the killer app for video telehealth.
So zooming out for a second, what are the implications of this long term for that face-to-face in an
That's
inpatient
a fair
setting,
question.
outpatient setting? Tell me what you see, you know, looking 5 years into the future.
It's going to be a trade-off. And I can't predict how Americans are going to, or the world, or humans are going to actually think about this. Consumers are going to think about this, but it's a trade-off between access, convenience, right? Access and convenience, and quality of care, right? Because we know that doctors that see more volume of patients with more diversity of patients, right? From diverse locations, diverse backgrounds, they tend to actually perform better than doctors that are seeing the same type of patient over and over and over again. We know that, you know, you can get access to the best doctors in the country, right? Imagine that your doctor was actually a doctor at Mayo Clinic, right? And they just saw you remotely, like, right? So now you have more consumer choice. So choice, access, convenience, and the other trade-off is familiarity, the way things were, right? Convention, and that sense of in-person interaction that some patients really enjoy, and I, as a doctor, really do enjoy. I will tell you, bankers. When was the last time you talked to a banker outside of a business, for personal banker? Probably not that often, unless you need a mortgage or something. People really don't, right? You don't really, or met them in person, not on the phone, but actually met them in person. It's not as common anymore. Bank tellers used to be the way of the world, and now, like, they are the most. They are not a large part of the way you think about things. But if you ask your parents, or if you ask your parents' parents, your grandparents, if you ask them, hey, how often did you have full conversations with bank tellers? They'll tell you all the time. Right? I mean, it's such a weird thing to think about. And it's the same thing about the milkman. Remember, there used to be a milkman.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember that growing up. I remember, he would come in, he would put it in the little, tin bucket in front of the house. That was a thing.
Yeah. And, I can tell you, I don't know who brings the milk to the local stores. I have no idea, but I don't need a milkman. Right? And, that's what I'm trying to explain, is like, that those human connections are going to get severed because there's just not enough doctors. There are too many patients. We're not getting early enough into preventative care. I think that will be a big movement because of coronavirus. I'm very proud of the fact that my colleagues, like that the doctors around the country, are saying, hey, we need to get healthier, have less chronic diseases, need to work on these problems from diet and nutrition, which, by the way, I was never taught in med school. And it's not a hate on my med school. It's actually more of a hate on the way the healthcare system is set up, right? We're a sick care system, not a well care system.
Right.
And that's going to change too. So hopefully that actually improves access to better health, not just better care. But I do think, to answer your question specifically, do I think that people are going to choose access and convenience over relationships? I think the answer is everywhere around us, right? Like, it's the relationship changes, it evolves. So, today, the doctor, messing around in your ear is not part of the relationship. The relationship is having that presence, that conversation. And if the doctor can spend more time talking to you instead of examining you, because they're actually using some robotics or something like that to examine you, and can actually have a real conversation with you, spend the time with you, wouldn't that be better? Like, do you really need their physical presence when you have their emotional attention? I don't know.
Well, if you hear what's going on outside right now, this is the 7:00 salute to the healthcare workers in New York.
Oh, really?
I
didn't even know that.
It's for you, buddy, as a matter of fact.
Well, I'm not in New York. I will tell you, I have so much respect. I mean, I have a few colleagues that, I'm an advisor for the Physician Innovation Network for the AMA, and there's one doctor that is actually at the front lines every day innovating. And, I've been talking to him a little bit, and he's just like, I asked him, I was like, how are you? And by the way, he has a 6-week-old child. And he's still out there. And I was like, how are you doing this? And he's like, I got to be up anyway. And that's the kind of attitude, right? And it's impressive.
That's really amazing. And Danish, like, I don't have many conversations where I'm just like, what? And really, this blew my mind. I mean, I knew generally what you guys did, but hearing you describe what the future looks like is awesome. It's bringing healthcare into the 21st century, and it's catching healthcare up to all the other industries that are already bringing access and quality and cost to the forefront of the consumer experience. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a doctor and for looking out for us. And thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We are the Society for Healthcare Innovation, and we are wishing you good night.